Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Monday episode of Stand Up. Very happy to have you joining me here as I start to rebrand this first segment, the beginning of the show. Might even place it in another place. Maybe I'll just get to the interviews. Right now, very excited to be recreating some of the segments and the format of the show. Getting rid of the 24/7 news drip, which I think was bad for me, and I think it's bad for you, and felt bad that I was selling it to you, and replacing it with a little bit of news, some positive stories, sharing from my life, and trying to find more ways to share from yours, to put spotlights on listeners like you. Adversity that you're overcoming, solutions to problems in your town, in your life, whatever's working, we'll break out into groups, we'll record segments, there's all kinds of things that we can do. And trying to figure that out. If you want to be a part of producing this show and where we go, and especially potentially creating a new focus on the community that we've built together, connecting people as we journey through our lives together in this country and beyond, trying to figure out how to navigate all that is happening on our planet and in our country, we are going to need some friends. Friends who care. Friends like you. That's what we're doing here on Stand Up. That's what we've always done. But we're going to try to put a focus on it and make it a premium. And how can we do that? I'm asking you right now. How can we do it? So join me tomorrow night, a special hangout for subscribers, help produce the show, design this new format, and hopefully you'll bear with me as I play around, toy around with some new ideas here. So if you want to be part of the brainstorm, that's Tuesday night at 8 p.m. East. Tuesday at 8 p.m. East on Zoom. Be a part of the brainstorm, the future of stand-up, the stand-up community, and everything that comes with it. All right, here's what I have for you today. I've got two excellent guests joining me on today's show. Coming up, Maura Quint. Before that, I've got S.E. Cupp. Today's show and all week is brought to you by Indeed.com, as well as almost 800 stand-up subscribers. And I am going to delve a little into the news over the weekend, a couple of stories that I want to mention. I hope that you had a great weekend. I definitely did. Warmed up the audience at HBO's Last Week Tonight, which you should always watch. It's, I think, the best show on TV. Very proud to be a part of that show, and 250 episodes. I got a mug, everybody, and I just started working with them, so I was very happy to include it in the mug giveaway. I'm going to sell it on eBay right away. No, I'm definitely going to send it to a friend who is a Monster fan. Also, Saturday night, got together with all of the folks, many of the folks who we worked together on the campaign for the Board of Education, and had a celebration, and it was so special and so inspiring, and I am so motivated to do more and organize and help you in your town. So if you want to know what we did and you're getting involved, we would love to talk to you. Just email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com. And yesterday I went to my daughter's recital. She is a 17-year-old. She was doing a jazz dance, and it was in a studio. There was maybe like 100 people in there, and I'm sitting right next to another person. And that person, some people had masks. I probably should have been wearing one, I guess, because the rate of contraction, the cases are really going up in and around New York, where I live in Rockland County. And this person next to me kept clearing their throat and then started coughing they sounded like they were probably little allergy coughs, but throughout the entire performance, just right next to me in an audience of people coughing over and over, and didn't wear a mask. I wasn't wearing a mask. What do you think about that? What do you think about that? If you know you're coughing and the rate of cases is really high, should you politely just wear a mask, or is that on me? Maybe it's just on me, just protect myself. I don't know. I thought that was definitely upsetting. And then after that, I went into a store. I had to buy some new shorts, and I heard this person clearing their throat, and I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds just like the person. And I turned and looked, and it was that person. I'm specifically not mentioning even the gender, but oh my goodness, was that absolutely crazy. I was, you gotta be kidding me. They're haunting me with that little cough. You know who you are. It was, maybe I'm too paranoid, but I'll let you know in a couple days if I have COVID. Also got out in the garden, got a lot of work done around the house, and felt really good knowing that I didn't have to come in here and do a 5-hour news production. So thank you for all of you, so many, dozens and dozens of emails. I have to get back to them. I really appreciate all of your support, your ideas, even your criticisms, and those of you who say, don't even think about it. Matter of fact, I'm raising my subscription. Several people did that for standupwithpete.com. So Amazing. I love you guys. And now just a couple of news stories I want to mention. First of all, the first shipment of baby formula from Nestle delivered to the U.S. apparently is supposed to help alleviate the critical shortage. It arrived in Indiana. President Biden and his National Economic Council director, Brian Deese, on TV talking about it. He was on CNN, said the shipment will account for 15% of the need for specialty medical grade formula. That's not going to be enough, but more flights are coming to ease the shortage, he said. The imports from Europe are being dubbed Operation Fly Formula, and the person who came up with that title is not getting any awards at all, but I guess it works. Operation Fly Formula, the latest effort to ease a shortage, has caused panic among millions of parents and caregivers. And speaking of panic, you've probably heard about the monkeypox. Calm down. It's not nearly as bad as it sounds. Health officials investigating an incident in Florida, the state's first presumptive positive case of monkeypox. It's in South Florida. The risk of contracting monkeypox remains very low to the overall community. Apparently, it's pretty hard to get. So let's not get too carried away with that one. Also wanted to mention the finding of nearly 300 pages of a new report that says leaders in the Southern Baptist Convention who released this report, a major third-party investigation, found sex abuse survivors were often ignored, minimized, and even vilified by top clergy in the nation's largest Protestant denomination. Shocking new details about specific abuse cases and shining a light on how denominational leaders for decades actively resisted calls for abuse prevention and reform. Evidence in the report suggesting leaders also lied. How about that? They lied to Southern Baptists over whether they could maintain a database of offenders to prevent more abuse when top leaders were secretly keeping a private list for years. A blockbuster report being reported by every major news outlet, the Associated Press, Washington Post, New York Times. That, a huge story over the weekend. Over in Crazy Town, or Earth 2 as I call it, there is a lot of talk. Apparently Kellyanne Conway, who I can't believe hasn't been given some kind of reality show yet, former senior counselor to President Donald Trump, and future resident of the pits of hell, has a new book out, which I hope nobody buys. I'm not even going to tell you the name of it, but according to the Washington Post, who obtained a copy, Conway avoids criticizing Trump directly, but has no such restraint regarding his son-in-law. Apparently, Kellyanne Conway and Jared Kushner never liked each other, and she describes him as shrewd and calculating in her new book, and claimed that he knew no matter how disastrous a personnel change or legislative attempt may be, he was unlikely to be held accountable for it, which, I don't know, do you believe anything that Kellyanne Conway says? Certainly something that you want to believe in that case, because that guy seems like such exactly that, shrewd and calculating. President Trump, for his former disgraced President Trump, geez, sorry about that. He spent his weekend exercising and volunteering at a local shelter. I'm joking. No, he spent his weekend on Truth Social, his alternative social media app, which nobody cares about, apparently, ranting about rhinos, the Wall Street Journal, scolding Mo Brooks, who sold his soul to him, and sharing a call for civil war. So that was Donald Trump over the weekend, the disgrace that he is. And I want to mention something I learned from Maura Quint, who is joining me today in her Twitter feed, and she mentioned her during the show. I want to try to give you cool things to think about, positive things, and new positive people. Well, Summer Lee is coming to Congress. She's a 34-year-old black woman in Pennsylvania. She's a proponent of Medicare for all, the Green New Deal. She just won her primary in a deep blue Pennsylvania district, all but guaranteeing she'll be in Congress next year. She's 34. Her coalition draws upon the working class voters of Pittsburgh who've left the city's traditional manufacturing jobs for its growing hospital and care sector, according to a professor at University of Pittsburgh who studies the grassroots politics that helped her get elected. So just wanted to give you a heads up if you're in Pennsylvania or if you're looking to learn more about an awesome campaign. Summer Lee seems like a really cool woman. And if Maura likes her, I like her, I got to say. And finally, just wanted to mention a piece I saw in the New York Times, which I thought was really important and impactful, captured some of my feelings. Something I think is just so important to mention. It's written by Tish Harrison Warren. She's a priest in the Anglican Church in North America, the author of Prayer in the Night for Those Who Work or Watch or Weep. And she writes in the New York Times in an opinion piece titled, "A million Americans have died from COVID. We need to mourn together." And I just want to select one part to mention. It's the entire piece is short, I think important, but she writes, of course, there's anger about needless deaths caused by failures in leadership, by disinformation, and by a fractured national response to COVID. This anger is warranted and it should be expressed. However, it's not enough to rage in the face of death. We have to descend into these deeper, more vulnerable places of acknowledging grief and fear in order to heal and grow beyond the anger that has so dominated our national conversations about COVID. As we reach this milestone, she writes, we can and should channel our collective grief into policies and practices that will help prevent more deaths in the future. We can continue to promote vaccines and persuade those who are skeptical of them. We can enact limited but more effective masking policies. We can install better indoor ventilation systems and ensure workers have robust sick leave. We can make sure that Evusheld and other life-saving drugs are widely available, and we can follow suggestions to protect older people and the immunocompromised. But beyond these practical responses, there is emotional work to be done. How can we, as a nation, ever heal, rebuild, and move forward unless we, together, can meaningfully grieve what has been lost? Again, that's Tish Harrison Warren in the New York Times in an opinion piece titled, "A Million Americans Have Died from COVID. We Need to Mourn Together." All right. Well, I thought that was a thoughtful piece. I wanted to share that with you. I want to give you things like that to think about, thoughtful things that make your life more clear and help you understand and gain perspective. That's the kind of stuff I want to do more of here on the show. So rough start, I know, but we're going to get there with your help. So send me your insights and ideas, how you think that sounds. We'll start to do it more and more. We'll build it up as I always have, but I'll do it with your help. So now time to get to the interviews, which of course is the best part of the show, the meat of the program that I host here every day, the brilliant people that I talk to. Today I got two great women joining me. Last week it was pretty sausage heavy, if you know what I mean. Lots of dudes on the show last week. I do try to find as much of a balance as I can, but it's hard because booking is challenging, much less booking based on, certain categories representing different ideas and backgrounds and so on. So always let me know who you want to hear and help me book it. Today, though, I've got two brilliant women coming up. Maura Quint, who joins me often here on Mondays, Maura Mondays. And first, though, I've got S.E. Cupp. Of course, she's now at CNN, but she was at Fox. She was at MSNBC. She has done it all. She's written a book. She's been on Real Time with Bill Maher a million times. She's a columnist for the Daily News. We always talk about her latest columns at the Daily News. You can follow her on Twitter at S.E. Cupp. And we start with a hard-to-believe story about a local politician who knocked on her door last week, and we go from there. Follow her on Twitter. Tell her you heard her here on the show. Always great having her. It's S.E. Cupp, my friend, right now. All right, there she is, my friend. S.E. Cupp is joining me, and I'm very happy every time we get to talk. I want to talk about your latest, but before we do, something super weird happened to you when some local politician knocked on your door. You shared this on social media. What on earth? Share, please.
It was wild. Like, if I didn't capture it on my Ring camera, I would have thought I hallucinated it.
Humble brag.
What, Ring cam?
Somebody's doing well.
Yeah, okay. So it's like the middle of the day, normal day. I'm home and I see this car pull up, and this very well-dressed older gentleman gets out of the car and he's got some flyers in his hand, and I can see as he's walking up, I can see the flyers and he's running for something in my town for some kind of office. Mm-hmm. And he gets up to the door and I open the door and he goes, "Oh, well, you look very nice for a housewife." And I think I was like, "Thanks." And then he goes, "Or whatever. Is your husband home?" I was like, yeah, he's on a call. He's at work. And he said, "Well, can I leave these with you and you can give these to him?" And I said, "Okay, time traveler, bye." Okay, man from the 50s.
Was he in? Wait, when you opened the door, was everything in black and white? Was he in black and white?
It was like Pleasantville. Like,
yeah.
It was wild, man. And like just all the things, right? You look nice, which I don't need to hear, for a housewife, which I'm not. You look nice for a housewife combined, please. Is your husband home? Just like, dude, you're in the wrong century. I almost felt bad for him. It was so obvious he didn't know where he was.
God, we should let's just riff on how if you knew that situation was happening, you could have actually played right into all his role. Like if you knew he was coming, you could have thrown on an apron and have like a pie. Oh, yes. Hello, sir. A vacuum cleaner and whatever other gender role he wants to. Wow.
Yes.
How did
totally.
Were you like, you don't seem upset by it. You kind of seem almost saddened. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
It was almost, listen, it was so over the top. It was almost adorable. Like, I don't, obviously he doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know how to talk to modern women. And I'm sure that's a problem in his life, right? Like in his interpersonal relationships that probably, affects him a little bit. But for me, it was just so bizarre. Yeah, I kind of just laughed at it. And then I remembered later that I probably had it on Ring. And so I was like, I'm sure he didn't say housewife. There's no way he said housewife. And sure enough, went back. There it was. Is your husband there? As if I'm also not a voter.
Right.
Like I vote in this house and you don't know this about me, man from the 50s, but I run this shit. Like I actually run this shit. Okay. Like the husband, he's oblivious. Okay. If you want something to happen in this house, go through me. And he was just like looking right through me, man.
Wow.
Right through me. Where's your husband?
Wow.
Wild.
You could have the cigarette with one of those plastic hips.
Should have been in my bathrobe and a couple kids hanging off my hips.
Sorry to bother you while you were housewifing.
Housewifing, yeah.
Is the house
I really
husband
should have played into it.
House husband is not a term, is it?
No, nor is housewife anymore. I mean,
well, yeah.
That's not a term. I know there's like the Real Housewives, but now that's almost like retro.
It was,
like,
though.
Especially during COVID. Don't you know that women are home working?
I mean, you did just host Celebrity Housewives.
I did.
Oh.
I did, and I'm proud of that. But
and that's
it was so retro. It was almost cute, almost a little sad. I wasn't mad. How could you be mad? It was like Mr. Rogers coming over.
No, he would never do that. How dare you? He would never be a sexist prick. Can you come on, please? So let me jump out of that into, you've been writing a lot about Elon Musk. And what's interesting is the foresight you had at the end of April to write a piece at the Daily News. It was when it first broke that he was going to buy Twitter. The title of this piece is, Who Does Twitter Owner Elon Musk Think He Is? His own tweets suggest he's in no position to govern others' behavior. And in that piece, you documented up until then much of what had been widely publicly reported, and just his tweets, his horrible things he's said and done. And then yesterday, Business Insider broke the story about him taking his dick out and then trying to silence the woman with $250,000 and a horse. And so the point is, he's in no position, as you wrote, to govern other people's behavior. What more do we know now about Elon Musk than what you knew when you wrote that piece back at the end of last month?
Well, let me just point out, he's in no position to govern other people's behavior, which seems to be the only reason he wants to own Twitter, right? He really does talk about it like that's his mission. His mission is to own Twitter so that he can police speech in, I guess, a better way than he thinks it has been. But listen, Elon Musk is, I don't know, I don't want to be impolitic about this, but we'll say politely, unpredictable. He doesn't seem to have those social guardrails. And I know, he has, I don't know, is he on the spectrum, or he's been open about that. And so some of this I think is probably explainable by that, but some of the other stuff, yelling at people on Twitter, degrading people on Twitter, I don't think you have to have a disorder to go there. Those are choices he makes. And he uses his influence to bully people and to intimidate people and threaten people. That's the last guy you want telling you what you can and can't do on Twitter. So I just think it's a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea because I think he's going to be terrible at this. And he might be great at making rocket ships and electric vehicles, but policing speech on a social media platform as big as Twitter.
Well, he gets a lot of credit for that. I think he's great at investing in people's ideas and designs that are great at building rocket ships and electric cars, et cetera. But, what does this latest report change about Elon Musk?
Nothing.
What are the consequences when you find out that the richest man in the world, a very public owner of very popular products? I mean, I have Solar City, now Tesla, they're called solar panels, and lots of people have the car, and obviously so many other things. So what does it mean now, Essie, for him that the whole, what he did, not only, which is sexual assault, but also he tried to silence a woman by buying her silence, which is always a lot of people making the point about he's all about free speech except for hers.
Yeah, I don't think it changes anything.
Really?
Because, and I just wrote about this as well, or maybe I did it for Unfiltered, I can't remember. Because he's very savvy in now aligning himself with the right, MAGA, and Republicans. He says he's going to now switch to the Republican Party because, quote, he wanted to leave the division and hate. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But he wants to switch, and he's done that for these moments so that he can get cover for behaving badly, saying terrible things, being impolitic, not knowing how speech is supposed to work, not understanding the Constitution, all these things. He'll get cover from them because that's what they do now. The GOP really doesn't exist as a political party as much, meant to sort of put ideas out there and compete in a marketplace of ideas. It exists as like a collection bin for unwanted ideas, rejected ideas, stuff that we've all decided that's no good anymore. We shouldn't do it. And people who just want to say whatever they want without accountability and then just blame cancel culture.
Yes.
That's all he wants. And so he's aligned himself with the people that are going to do all the work for him. They're going to defend him. They're going to blame wokeism. They're going to do all the things that they did for Trump and name your person. So I don't think it changes anything for him. Yeah.
Well, you did that for your Unfiltered video this week on CNN, which I just watched. It's really good. And just one thing that you mentioned again and to highlight, you said in that video about, it's the party, the Republican Party has become the party of authoritarianism, not pro-democracy. That's one litmus test. And the other one you did just mention is it's become the party where you can say anything. And I think you might now add, do anything, sexual assault, rape, and get elected to office and stay in office, much less, stay on TV. You can say anything without consequences, which is a weird human threshold. It's not Republican or conservative, liberal or Democrat. It's just like you can't be an asshole in this family, in this school, in this company without consequences. That's everywhere, but not there.
Not there. It's the last sort of bastion of idiocy, and also, I mean, doing bad things includes, yes, sexual harassment and assault, but also includes like speaking at white national rallies.
Great point.
Right? I mean, it also includes aligning with really terrible, awful, dangerous ideas, conspiracies, groups, extremism. You can do all of that. For the most part, there have been very few consequences for people in Congress or in the Republican constellation, the Republican universe, who have aligned with white nationalists, extremists, anti-Semites, homophobia, Islamophobia. They're running for office. This stuff used to be disqualifying. It's not now. It's completely tolerated. And in some circles, appreciated.
Well, yes, but let's talk about the exceptions. You covered the primaries this week on CNN. And so in certain places, that certainly is true and people got elected. But luckily in my town, we were able to beat those people. So Love won. And the soul of my town is still good. And that threshold, that litmus test is not the case here. You can't actually say and do anything and commit crimes against people and still win an election. But in some places, you certainly can. Increasingly, it's ascendant, as the great Steve Bannon says, that kind of behavior. So what happened this week? What, pick any election that you covered that you want to talk about, because obviously I've been talking all week about what happened here and across the country at school boards this week.
Well, I just want to know from you, what was the political climate that allowed this to happen in your town? Was it hard? Was there a lot of opposition? How did that happen?
It manifested. It's nothing. It's actually not so original, so it's not really hard to talk about. It's like, oh, it's local politics. It's unique to the players and the issues to your town. No, it's the playbook from on high. It's the anti-CRT. It's the frankly, gay, which is just, that shocked me. My naivete is clearly on display there. And it's all of it, the quote parental rights groups, certainly the anti-maskers and all that COVID animated. One of the people that was running was a super racist NYPD officer. And I say that pretty openly. People can go watch his commentary at the PTA and at the BOE meetings and decide for themselves. But he's trying to sell ivermectin during the COVID. He was at the BOE. He had a picture of Trump on his Facebook page. It said, he changed his profile that said, "Fuck you," because that's why. He literally had that up. I'm like, hey, you can do that. I don't think it's a good idea for a cop to do that, much less a guy who wants to be on the board of education. But yeah, right. He got the
Wait, so was it a Republican town? Is it a Republican town?
No, not necessarily. It's like light blue, and it's very divided. I happen to live in the redder part for sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's like the Irish, Italian, Catholic, Christian, firefighter, cop, Fox News, watching Trump loving types, I guess, all mostly white.
Yep. Okay. I get it. Well, yeah, I think what is hard is a good reminder. And this local microcosm sounds like, I'm sure, a lot of places now. Yeah. So there was one race in Pennsylvania. Doug Mastriano won his race. He was the governor. Trump backed him late, but he was the Trump candidate. And what's really remarkable about that race is that Democrats poured a ton of money into getting Mastriano elected because they want to face the fringiest.
Oh, wow.
Right. So they sent out mailers. They cut ads tying him to Trump's strongest defender, they called him. Well, in a state like Pennsylvania, a swing state, I think they thought there were these imaginary country club Republican districts where that was going to turn people off. And in fact, no, that helped him get elected. Republicans in red Pennsylvania heard that and said, yeah, okay, well, then that's my guy. And we'll see if it pays off in the general for Democrats that Mastriano, will be too extreme for Pennsylvania. But if we've learned anything from 2016, it's that these people get elected in places they shouldn't. And I think increasingly, where there are red districts or even red pockets of a town, you have to assume they're real red. They're not pink. They're real red. And so to go in and imagine that the quote unquote extreme candidate is going to be too extreme for these districts or these parts of towns, I think is like a fantasy.
I think that's a good point, except for in almost every district or board of education. But when the governor thing, it seems, or even a senator, a U.S. senator, it would seem to be more effective because it's the entire state voting, right? So it's not the pockets.
Yes, but so you're betting that, right? The Democrats are betting that he's going to, be too extreme for the whole of Pennsylvania. But he was not too extreme for the right because the right is so far right.
Yeah.
They didn't pick the other, Trump candidate, who was slightly less Trumpy. They picked him. You have to imagine those are the people going out to vote. So I don't know. I mean, again, it's a risky strategy. It might pay off for Democrats. They might have backed the right guy. But I think there's a reading of swing states and certain districts that is not totally true anymore. And I think you have to imagine where it's red, it's real red now.
He is running against the Democratic nominee is Josh Shapiro. He's currently the attorney general there. So vote for Shapiro.
For governor, right.
But yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And Essie, what do you think about the rest of the Trump-backed candidates? The constant question over the last 4 years, and certainly you're better equipped to handle it than a lot of folks, is Trump's influence waxing or waning? Is it increasing or decreasing? I know it's state by state, district, and so on, but overall, in terms of the candidates that he supports, apparently he just pulled his support for
David Perdue, yeah.
David Perdue in the Georgia gubernatorial campaign. Where do you put his influence right now? Is that a stupid question?
What?
Is that a stupid question?
No, it's a good question, and I'll answer it in a way that will sound like I'm not answering it. But here's the truth. He's just had a harder time with gubernatorial candidates because he doesn't really understand state politics as well as he does politics on the ground in these local, grassroots communities. So he's had better luck with House candidates and Senate candidates than he has with gubernatorial candidates always. And so pulling the David Perdue, getting a couple of those wrong. He got Idaho wrong. His candidate in Idaho didn't win the gubernatorial primary. Brad Little did. I don't think that says a lot about his influence. I think that says more about his lack of kind of awareness of how the state at the state house level, how politics works. But listen, he's still very influential, in these smaller races. But what's interesting is I increasingly see him endorsing later and later. Right.
Well, he's playing he's a gambler.
He wants to win. He doesn't care about getting Republicans elected. He doesn't care about, the politics. He wants to be the guy that chose the winner. And so he's backing them later and later, which I think tells you he doesn't even think he's got his finger on the pulse.
Well, he can make the argument and he can sell the pipe dream that his influence matters if he comes in like 2 days before when the polls got somebody way up and be like, look, all the candidates have backed once, eh? I mean, look at
it. Doesn't it? I mean, it didn't help Madison Cawthorn, right? I mean,
yeah. What happened there? Tell me. You wrote a piece about that at the Daily News. Go ahead.
Well, it has to be a movie someday. Maybe I'll option it or something because it's so crazy. Madison Cawthorn is a uniquely
handsome,
clownish candidate. I think I wrote that he's the whole clown car and he plays all the clowns, right? Like he's the clown car personified and every clown that walks out is him. And it's like, well, here's me doing, sexual assault allegations. And then here's me doing the ethics investigation. Here's me doing maybe, some fraud. Here's me maybe, one after the other. He was doing all of it, visiting Hitler's summer house because it was on his bucket list.
Taking guns through airports.
The weird videos. It just never ended with this guy. Yeah. So you can't take a ton of lessons out of him losing because of course he lost. He's a clown. But I think what is instructive is when the environment was right and Senator Thom Tillis in North Carolina really took Madison Cawthorn on early, from inside the Republican Party, said, this guy's a clown. He doesn't care about us. He doesn't care about the party. He just cares about himself. And he spent a lot of money. His PAC spent a lot of money trying to get Madison Cawthorn primaried. And it worked, even though Madison Cawthorn was the Trump candidate. So if you've got someone like Thom Tillis, who does not feel afraid of Trump in this setting, you've got a candidate like Madison Cawthorn, who is just ripe to be knocked off. You've got a good candidate running against him. Chuck Edwards was like a traditional businessman kind of Republican. And you've got a district that was a little lukewarm on Madison Cawthorn. They complained not about all the stuff I just mentioned, but like that he didn't show up for votes regularly, that he wasn't a present congressman. So all those conditions were ripe, which is to say, I know it feels inevitable that these lunatics and clowns and kooks are just here to stay. You can get them out, but you need help from Republican leadership. You need conditions to be, just so, but it can be done.
Final thing I want to ask you about, because you've been talking about this a lot, is what happened in Buffalo last weekend, you were in a really interesting conversation on Citizen by CNN called Mass Shootings in America with Jim Acosta and Van Jones. I think you guys might have talked for an hour. And
we did, which is so rare, right? To have that much time and space.
Yeah. I was really happy to see that. And obviously, you've got all kinds of thoughts about guns and gun laws and gun regulations, and you have all kinds of thoughts and opinions, obviously, about white supremacy in America. So how do you want to, what happened? We should all go watch that discussion. We want to learn more. But anything that you want to take out of that you added or Van added, or any thoughts about the shooting, whether it be guns or white supremacy? What here at the end, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, what I liked about the Citizen by CNN conversation is that it didn't fixate on one thing. It wasn't just about guns. It wasn't just about race and extremism. It wasn't just about politics. It wasn't just about mental health, for example. We covered it all because there is no one solution for these problems. The problem is hate, and we have to come at hate from lots of different angles. That's a community problem. It's an education problem. It is a politics problem. It's a radicalization problem. It is a gun problem, and it is a mental health problem. All those things are there. And so what I appreciated about an hour is what you can't do in 5 minutes, in a quick hit on TV.
Right.
To really unpack all of that and to have a safe space where Van and I trust each other, completely.
Yeah. We've
done 1,000 of these. And so he knows when I'm talking about guns, where I'm coming from. And I know when he's talking about racism, we just trust each other there, and vice versa. So listen, I talked about gun violence, and as a gun owner and a former NRA member, needing to talk about guns differently. I used to just rush to defend the Second Amendment and explain all the reasons why this law wouldn't have changed it, or that law's impractical, or criminals don't follow gun laws, or why should I be? All true, but not a conversation starter to solve a problem. That's a conversation ender. And on the left, similar kinds of conversations. You're the problem, Essie. You're, an NRA member, and you have blood on your hands. I said, I'm a law-abiding gun owner. What? That's a conversation ender. Right. So I talked about wanting to have these conversations differently, and I will go first. I'm not too proud to put down my arguments and just talk about solutions. And so we talked about a lot of good common sense gun solutions and laws that I think we should address. We talked about race. I think that is at the heart of this story. And extremism and the rise in white extremism, right-wing extremism. That's important to identify and discuss. And we talked about Fox's role in that and, Republicans' role in that. That's important. And then, listen, I brought up mental health, and I know people get squeamish about linking, mental health and a racial hate crime. They are not linked. These are discrete issues. He's a racist, not because he has any mental illness. He's a racist. And he's not violent because he has a mental illness. He's just violent. That was a choice. And so we don't want to conflate those two things. We don't want to stigmatize mental health, and we don't want to give his racism an excuse. However, when you're talking about guns, it's actually really important to determine if there was a mental health aspect. And he had been evaluated before this episode. Right. In New York, as you may or may not know, we have red flag laws. Had his mental health evaluation gone in another direction, he could have been adjudicated by a court as unable to purchase firearms. He goes to purchase firearms. No red flag comes up. He purchases them legally. But the red flag laws, especially if we can strengthen them, actually could prevent a bad guy, in this case, who happens to be a racist, an extremist, from getting guns. I think that's important. So people say, stop blaming mental health. This is about race. It is. But if you want gun solutions, this is one. And I think we should talk about mental health, not as an excuse for racism, not to deflect or distract from it, but because it is an area that I think we should be targeting among all the others that I mentioned.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I understand anybody's reaction when people focus on mental health or all they give is thoughts and prayers because they're scapegoats in a silo. But life is not a vacuum. And the hijackers on 9/11 were all radicalized religious extremists who were also probably had some serious issues mentally.
Right.
And so all of that, every terrorist, people who commit that kind of violence, whether it be suicide, right? Suicide bombers or homicidal, we used to call them maniacs. There's a mental health component. And in this case, as you mentioned, my understanding was that he was evaluated as making homicidal and I think suicidal threats.
Yes.
And so I'm no mental health expert, but you can classify that whatever you want. But guess what? Guy doesn't get a gun.
Exactly.
That's all I'm saying. So
I think, I've said for a long time, listen, happy, healthy people don't go and shoot up supermarkets. They don't go and shoot up theaters. They don't go and shoot up schools. There is a mental illness to all of that. It doesn't have anything to do with racism and the violence. Right. And that's a discrete thing, and we should deal with that discreetly. But I don't think you can say, stop talking about mental health.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you can keep saying it doesn't have anything to do with, but I think everything is interconnected. They're all seemingly connected to me. Like, to be that racist and that radicalized means somehow you were vulnerable because whatever your mental capacity is, and you went online, watched videos in your basements, played video games, whatever it was, where that drip, and there was no other out. Who knows? It's definitely top and first and foremost the racism as the impulse, clearly. But everything else matters to talk about. And, you can't get that done on Twitter, much less even on cable news, because, as you already said, it's nuanced. All right. Well, I've gone over my time. I appreciate it very much. You, as always. Thank you very much for talking to me. And we will talk very soon, I hope, again soon. Thank you, S.E.
So great, as always. Thank you, Pete. Talk soon.
All right, there she goes, S.E. Cupp, at S.E. Cupp, reader at the Daily News, watch her on CNN, and look for all kinds of new exciting things that she is doing. We're always talking about different ideas, both of us. Creatively, we talk often off the air about things we might do together individually, and I love working with her, love brainstorming with her. S.E. Cupp on Twitter, please go say hi. And coming up, Maura, Quint, but first, I do have to tell you about Indeed.com, because for your company's next hire, you want them to have great problem-solving skills. You want them to think like an entrepreneur. The thing you need help with? How to find them. Well, that's easy. You need Indeed. See, Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. And instead of spending like hours on all these different job sites, searching for all kinds of different candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring partner that can help you do it all. Tom and Leslie at Noble Pies just reached out to me, said they were using Indeed. I got to find out how it's going for them. You can find great talent faster through time-saving tools like something called Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. With Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description. So if you want to make pie, that would be the job description. And if you make pie and that's your job, you're a happy person. The moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed.com, the resume will match their job description 80% of the time. Indeed saves you headaches. Interview virtually with no downloads, plugins, or purchases. You do it all in one place with Indeed. After using Indeed's virtual interviews, most employers said it saved them days of hiring time, which is a lot of money, according to Indeed data. And with Indeed's reliability assessment, they can even predict candidates' punctuality and work attendance and pie-making skills, I'm guessing. Even better, Indeed's the only job site where you only pay for applications that meet your must-have requirements. Indeed is an unbelievably powerful hiring partner, delivering 4 times more hires than all the other job sites combined. Join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Sign up for Indeed now and get a $75 credit toward your first sponsored job. Plus, earn up to $500 in sponsored job credits with Indeed's virtual interviews. Visit Indeed.com/standup to learn more. Claim your credits at Indeed.com/standup. Indeed.com/standup. Terms and conditions apply. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. We did it. All right. There you go. Go to Indeed.com right now. Indeed.com/stand-up, I should say. Okay, well, I was real happy to get the brilliant and hilarious Maura Quint back on the show. She joins me often on Mondays, but we haven't been able to get it together the last, I think, 3 weeks. So it was great to catch up with her. She is, of course, an amazing writer, hilarious humor writer. She's also an activist. Her work has been featured in all kinds of publications, all the best, from The New Yorker to Rolling Stone's top 25 funniest Twitter accounts. Maura Quint is at Behind Your Back. She is the co-creator of taxmarch.org, which she was the executive director, and now she's over at Americans for Tax Fairness, where she's the campaign director. She is a mother of 2 boys, and like I said, a good friend of mine, lives out in Pennsylvania, so we talked about that. We talked about Elon Musk, but we started our conversation talking about the fact that Maura had a little bit of an accident in her home a couple of weeks ago, or a week ago, I think. She dropped a bottle, and she stepped on it, and had to get stitches in her feet. So that is where we start, and let's hit it. Everybody is sitting here going, what happened to Maura's feet? Please tell us about...
I mean, people ask that regardless what has happened. That's just like a constant refrain weekly. What's up with Maura's feet? Yes. Do you want to do a new segment? Just like a Maura's feet segment?
Well, people don't know Maura's feet are that of a hobbit's. And they're fur. They're furry. There's 3 toes.
They're meant for tree climbing. They're they're very useful, utilitarian feet that the toes spread wide and
is that right? Can you grasp a pen or a tool?
Hell yeah, I can. I hate bending over.
So what? Tell us how you injured yourself.
By being an absolute fucking idiot. I think is probably no. I do too many things at once. Like many of us do. We're trying to juggle. We're trying to cram like a 20-hour day into like 14 waking hours, and it's just like not. It doesn't. The center cannot hold. So I had 30 minutes basically in between like meetings and having to get dinner for my kids, and I was just like. The important thing that I needed to do in that 30 minutes was go to the liquor store. So I did. I went really quickly to the liquor store and because I was just out of everything and I was like, all right, and then we'll be good because I'm going to make steak later and I'd like to have red wine with that so I can make a marinade. There was a reason for it. It wasn't just alcoholism. So I went to the liquor store and then on the way back from the liquor store, I was like, oh shoot, my mom called. I got to call her back. She's like, so I was trying to do that. So I called my mom. I'm on the phone. I'm coming with the, bottles and I look at the clock and I've got 10 minutes before I got to start getting the kids fed. And I also still have emails coming in. And so I'm just really distracted and I'm trying to put away the bottles. And I don't know if you've ever seen on a vodka bottle or some other forms, but usually on a vodka bottle, there'll sometimes be a collar around the lid, like a cardboard kind of thing, an advertisement usually.
Sure.
So I'm on the phone, I'm not even looking at what I'm doing. And I kind of grab the vodka bottle by the collar and I can tell it just starts to slip out. And because I can tell, I kind of lunge forward trying to sort of somehow catch it or whatever, which does not work. So it shatters to the ground, but now I'm off kilter. So I have to take that step or two forward, just onto the broken glass. So the best part is that I'm on the phone with my mom and I just and then I just go down and I'm I still trying to be real calm, just I'm going to have to call you back. And I hang up and I'm just bleeding out. It's just shattered
Maura.
glass everywhere. It just pools of blood. And the only people in the house are my children. And so and I'm trying, I don't want to scare them. So I'm just trying to be all cheery, just hey guys, you need a little help. No big deal. Just real and my youngest is real. I could see the panic on his face. So that makes me go into hyper happiness even more, so I'm just splattered on the ground, but just everything is great. This is what I wanted to do. If you could just go into the bathroom and get a couple of towels, that would be great. And he's running around. And my oldest has an old version of my phone, but he can get my texts basically. So a warning, if anyone wants to send me anything dirty, it's a 10-year-old could see this. But the best part is he's playing a video game and my mom texts are you okay? And I later saw the text that my 10-year-old sent back, which was, this is Luke. She's okay. She's bleeding a lot, she's probably not okay. She says she's okay. Like, that's what he wrote back to my mom.
Oh my gosh. What did your mom do?
Well, they don't live too far, but my mother is also injured, but my brother was in town. It's a whole thing. So they came over, but they didn't get there for another half an hour or so. So I was already laid up and wrapped. But anyway, I went to urgent care and I spent my Friday night in urgent care and got stitches in the bottoms of both of my feet. So that has been really fun for me because I just like to injure myself, I guess. It's like my new hobby.
You injured yourself last year. You cut yourself somehow.
Right. Yeah. With, by like knocking a bowl off of a high place, a ceramic bowl that shattered.
A bottle of vodka isn't cheap. Nothing is. How upset were you?
It was a nice one too.
And it was nice. How upset were you about just that part, that it was gone? Because that's probably...
you know what? I should have been, but that speaks to the level of actual pain I was in.
Right.
It didn't even register.
And I guess, the kids walk in and you're bleeding and you're like, grab that bottle of vodka and pour it on my cuts to...
Well, right. I was like, you know what? If you're going to cut yourself on anything, at least it's like...
alcohol.
I really should have just been like licking the floor too for the pain. Like that would have been smart, but I wasn't.
When you went to urgent care, were you honest about how was that experience? You actually tweeted about that, which is interesting. Anybody's experience is always interesting at urgent care or any doctor. But were you honest with the people who cared for your feet that it was in fact a bottle of vodka?
Yes, but the bigger point,
did they call child protection services on you?
No, but like the doctor clearly didn't believe me. And I think it's partially because like my brother and a friend, like my brother drove me to the urgent care. He hung out for a little bit. And, my brother and I both have a similar sense of humor. So we're just like making lots of jokes. Like that's how we're dealing with the stress of it. And then another guy comes who's a friend who's going to take me home. And like the doctor didn't buy my story that I was sober and like putting away a bottle. He was just like, so you guys were having a party, right? Like you're partying tonight, huh? Like he like kept like pushing on this. And I'm like, this is my brother. Like, I don't know what you think is happening, but this is not like, he wasn't like super judgy. He was just kind of like, it's cool. I'm cool. You can tell me. Like,
sound like you wanted to get invited.
Like, I know, kind of a little bit. And I was just like, no, dude.
Is there anything else about that experience? How did you deal with, I know I reached out to you during the week and you were laid up. How did you mentally deal with that? That's hard. It's very hard to not be able to, in your case, walk around. I mean, you have to let your feet heal. That's crazy.
Well, I'm not very good at that. I mean, some people, I have definitely met people who are just like, I am sick. Others will cater to me. I'm no good at that. I'm just like, really obnoxiously independent in a really sort of probably self-destructive way to a point. So basically the first day, like I couldn't really move, but I was like, well, this is unacceptable. There's no way I'm just not going to move. So what I found out that I could do was that I could kind of crab walk because my heels were okay. So if I walked around on my hands and like, sort of backwards with a crab walk, and then there was like, I have wood floors, and then I had a towel on the floor, and then I could like put things on the towel, and then I could kind of like pull the towel along with me with my heel as I was crab walking, and then I could like move things from room to room.
Do you have any video of that we can put out on the internet? Folks, visualize it.
If you just like picture basically any horror movie when like the girl like comes out of the well and is like moving in like a really creepy way. Maura. It's like that, except that my hair's not that long.
Well, that's innovative nonetheless.
I figured out what I had to do. Yeah. The other thing that I
just really dragging enjoyed, vodka around your house in a blanket is all.
I have really enjoyed because I've injured my feet. I mean, like I went my whole life I'd never injured myself. I'd never had stitches before last year.
Oh, wow.
And now I'm like, never. This is not a common thing for me. It's just like a new hobby I picked up later in life. It's like how old people are suddenly like, oh, I play pickleball now. It's just like, oh.
And they are. We've got to do a segment on the culture of pickleball of a certain age. We really do. You know what? I think that should be your first paid assignment as a correspondent here. As we make changes in the show, Maura's going to report from the field on certain cultural phenoms, and pickleball with a certain age is one of them. It's happening. If it's not happening in your community, something's wrong with your community.
No, it is happening. Actually, I have a lot to say about pickleball.
Oh, you do?
Get there. I've like
My one question is, whatever you have to say about it, will you soon be playing yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I now have rackets and a
all right.
net.
Cool.
But so the thing I was going to say, so from having injured myself on the feet like the last couple of years, I've been so fascinated. Every doctor and like the nurses as well, always are just like, well, at least like it's not going to scar too bad. It's going to scar on your feet, like. And they're always like, they always make this a big part of the like consultation and the conversation. And while I'm like bleeding, like while I'm in tremendous pain. And I'm just like, I don't care. Just like close the wound. I do not give a shit. What are you talking about?
My
like,
God.
They're like, and every single time they're like, well, you'd be surprised how many people do. I'm like, like maybe if it were a big gash on my face or something, but like, we're talking about my feet.
Wow.
Like, did you look at my feet and think, oh, well, she was a foot model. This is tragic for her entire, like, because you shouldn't have.
I mean, not even that, the bottom of your feet, I'm suspecting, but.
Exactly.
Like, who is seeing the bottom of your feet?
I don't know. Like, I've had to make, it's fine. No one is hitting on me for my feet jokes, like, repeatedly. Like, to the point where I'm making, like, foot job jokes to the doctors. Cause I'm just like, right? Stop. Just sew my feet up. Yeah. Anyway.
Have you never had a person do a foot thing, like on the subway or some weird thing? Or ask for pictures of your feet or something like that?
No one ever has. And that's the way that I know that I'm still nobody.
Oh, that's all going to change. At Behind Your Back, everybody. Let her know if you're into feet that look like Jesus's, all torn up. Oh, that was bad. Then
well, he walked across the desert. Those are not going to be some nice
That's true.
Feet. That's fair.
All right. Well, there are 3 other issues that I definitely know I want to get to. Whenever we talk, we go everywhere. There are no rules, but I'm glad you're on the mend and back on your feet. And because there's a couple of other things I want to talk with you about. First of all, of course, you've got a lot to say about Elon Musk because you have made basically a living being critical of billionaires. And and you're also a hilarious writer. And so if a billionaire does a thing, you're going to write about them. But SpaceX flight attendant said Elon Musk exposed himself and propositioned her for sex, according to documents. The company paid $250,000 for her silence, and also apparently, as part of this agreement, offered to buy her a horse. So before we get to the seriousness of this allegation and the reporting, which comes from Business Insider with a lot of really good journalism, why the horse is my question, Maura. I tried to explain this to my daughters, and that was their question. Why the horse?
I think that if you spend enough time just being completely rich and out of touch, like you don't think about things like, do you have student loans? Can I buy you a house? Do you even want like a vacation or something like that? The sort of thing that people might need. Do you have medical debt? Perhaps that type of thing. You just think like, oh, what do girls like? I don't know, horses, I guess. Like, right. I think that's pretty much it. That's the level of thought there.
When you heard the allegation, what was your reaction? And then talk a little bit about the reporting of it, because I know you and others are speculating that, I guess it's probably not speculation. It just has to be the case, or else the Business Insider could be sued, that they reached out to him for comment. He knew the story was coming, and he tried to preempt it on Twitter by creating a different narrative. Do I have that right?
Yeah. I mean, Business Insider has said as much. They said they reached out to him.
Yeah. So he then goes on the offensive and starts saying, if anybody ever says anything about me, type of tweets, right?
Yeah. No, he's like, I mean, the problem with him, one of the many problems with him is simply the weird, massive cult following that he has. These like huge swaths of people who believe him and think he's funny. That's like, oh God, they think he's really funny. They think he's so great. And it's so upsetting and so terrifying. But so he can like speak to them in that kind of Trumpian sort of way of like, my very, very loyal idiots, come to me. Here's something I need you to know.
Right.
The political establishment has decided I am an enemy and they shall track me down and you must protect me. Like and they all just, pledge allegiance to the weirdo. And it's so bizarre to me because I never quite know, like, do they think if they're nice enough, he'll give them something? Like, that doesn't seem it. Do they think that, like, they're just a couple of steps away from being him? I'm not. That seems to be more likely. And that is like, it's like an ant just being like, we have to protect the bears because I could be a bear someday. It's not going to ever happen, ever.
Right.
And you're going to die really soon, probably because the bear's going to step on you. But like, you know.
Yes. Very well said. Great. Is that an analogy? I think that's an analogy. Yeah. Well, you know, I was telling you just before we hit record that my daughter's caught wind of this thing with Elon Musk. It got on Snapchat, I guess, wherever my 14-year-old and her friend. And they were asking me about it. And I said, listen, here's what you need to know. If anything ever like this happens to you, then obviously at your age now,
you should become a billionaire. And you just are like, here's what you got to do.
You too can become a billionaire. Listen,
get a bunch of horses. You're going to need to give them out. I said to my
14-year-old, if a billionaire ever takes his dick out, you keep that one. You take that one for the team. No, I mean, like, I think that there's a teaching moment for everybody, but certainly for young, especially women who, or even men who might be in this situation where a person of power propositions himself, generally speaking, in the workplace. You know, we're not talking about Elon Musk, a billionaire and a flight attendant. We're talking about shit that happens everyday sexism that puts people in a tough spot. And so I was just telling my daughter and her friend who were asking about it, I said, you need to document this. If something happens, you need to tell a friend, you need to write about it. That's how you can protect yourself first and foremost, as soon as, you know. And what do you think of that advice is what I'm asking.
I think it's unfortunate and true. Yeah. I think that generally speaking, society places the onus on the victim to prove that something was occurred or that they were victimized at all, which is, I think, what a lot of the Me Too movement was trying to do, was to try and shift that power a little bit, because it was so intensely out of whack that, you know, as long as the perpetrator was a particular type of person, and that generally meant a white man, but not exclusively, then the victim basically needed to, like, you know, create some sort of miracle to ever be necessarily seen as credible. And now we're in a little bit of a slightly very tiny hair, little teeny bit better moment where we have at least a handful of people willing to give a little bit more weight to people who have been victimized and to the things that they say. But unfortunately, it is still tremendously lopsided, and victims are still it's going to be demanded that they prove. And I'm not saying that a victim shouldn't, but, you know, it is going to require a lot of proof, generally speaking. And so, yeah, anything you can do to kind of create some documentation that this is what occurred is valuable.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I wasn't sure if I was, you know.
You didn't screw up.
Yeah,
congrats.
I don't know. Yeah, you don't know what to say in that case. It's one of those many conversations that happen in the car that, you know, I like to try to give the best possible take on, but you're like, ooh, maybe I missed something. All right. How about this? He has denied the allegation that he sexually harassed this flight attendant in 2016. He's characterized as part of a smear campaign against him. Why would she say it if it wasn't true? Is the other thing I said to my daughters. Like, I said, if you accuse a powerful person, much less the richest man in the world, you know, it's a guarantee half the world is going to call you horrible names or more. And so why come forward?
Well, right. I mean, there's this whole, like, idea that, you know, women in particular are these sort of manipulative, money grubbing bitches who are just like, yeah, I see a dude with money, I'm going to take him down one way or another. Like, that's this general idea. But absolutely, coming forward and making an accusation of someone who is powerful is so difficult, and you just get run through the ringer. It is not like easy money at all, and you may never see a dime. And I generally don't think that is a reason that motivates the majority of people. But in this case, we're talking about something that happened a while ago, and something that, you know, there already was the payout of. This is not like a new accusation. And from what I've heard from other reporters, there have been other accusations of him as well. So it's not necessarily a singular thing, and it's not new. It seems to be probably just, what he thinks he can get away with.
Yeah, I think it was your Twitter timeline where which respected journalist was. Here it is, Amy Westervelt, who's very good. She's an investigative journalist and host of the Drilled podcast. She's super smart, a lot of integrity. And she writes, raise your hand if you covered Tesla for any stretch of time and got tips about this sort of shit on the regular. I know I did all the way back in around 2010-ish. And the other just point about that is there's a lot of really good journalists who hear all kinds of things that you probably believe, you probably know are true, but you can't ethically report them because you don't have the sources and et cetera and so on. So that's one point. What else?
Yeah, I mean, she says further in that thread as well, because somebody was like, well, why weren't they published? And she said, she tried. She took it to a couple of outlets and they did not want to do that. They did not feel that there was enough that necessarily safeguarded them from facing these tremendous lawsuits from incredibly wealthy and powerful people. So,
I see that now. I didn't realize it was a thread.
Yeah, it's really very hard to do. It's not easy to get eyes on this thing. I actually had a friend who was going through this and who was trying to find anyone to take up her story, and there was just no one was willing to put their neck out there because of that, because you're pretty much guaranteeing that you're going to be sued.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else about this guy, this asshole? And what I asked the maybe two guests that I interviewed since this story broke, I said, what will the consequences be for the richest man in the world, the very, very famous, the very, weird, outspoken, constantly owner of Tesla, SpaceX, Starlink, whatever the hell else he owns? Like, what are the consequences for him?
Oh, none. He doesn't live in a consequence world. He lives in a completely consequence-free world. I mean, he's just, when I see someone like him in particular, because, he owns these companies, but he's not doing the innovation. He's not some brilliant scientist or engineer. He just purchases things. He just strikes me as someone who is so goddamn bored. Like, he's just going to play with whatever he has, and that's people's lives, because he doesn't care. He's just looking to, wouldn't it be funny if, he more than any of the others reminds me of the It's a Good Life Twilight Zone, just the fucking spoiled little kid with the magical powers, just wishing people away or, making whatever he wants appear. And his parents desperately try to placate him. That's him. That's Elon Musk to me. It's just it's
so good,
yes,
Maura.
Yes, it's good that Elon did that. That's how we all are. And now that he's talking about threatening to create this whole legal department, it's going to increase. You're going to have far more journalists and people just, yes, it's good that Elon did that. That's the world he is creating. And now we're fucking stuck in it.
Right. Let me ask you, as much as I want to keep talking about this and billionaires, there's two other things I wanted to hope to get to, and I don't want to take all of Maura's time. She has feet that need healing and other things. So
what else could I step on? Fun. You never know. Every day's an adventure.
You could step out of the Pennsylvania primaries, Maura. Let's go to Maura Quint. She's in Pennsylvania following politics closely. Maura, what happened on Tuesday?
Pete, thank you. It's just crazy down here on the ground. Oh, my goodness. I have gone to so many diners. I have been in and out of diners just talking to people about
did you mostly focus on the whites?
The egg whites, Pete.
Oh, you got us again, Maura. But seriously, tell us about this governor.
Oh, God. It's bad. It's bad down here. Yeah. We had our primary last week here in Pennsylvania. There was some good news. We had some of the more progressive candidates win. We had Summer Lee win. Wow, mashup there. Out towards Pittsburgh, which is fantastic. She's a really great progressive fighter. And we had Fetterman here in state win the Democratic primary, which is solid. I mean, there's positives and negatives. Yeah. There was no perfect candidate, but he's no Joe Manchin, which is what a Connor Lamb would have been. So,
oh really? I did not realize that Connor Lamb, who was his opponent in the primary, And is his health okay? The Fetterman, he had a stroke, for Christ's sake, like a day before.
I know. I mean, I don't know. I'm not his doctor. I mean, like, I'm the girl who stepped on a bunch of broken glass. So, like, who am I to diagnose anybody else?
We should go back to reporter voices for that. I'm not equipped to answer that one. I'm a goddamn reporter, Pete. I'm not his physician, for Christ's sake. What do I know? Hopefully, you got a stent. Moving on.
I can barely walk, but the moment I can get back to it, I will certainly let you know. He's not bad. But on the other side, we've got some really fucking terrible candidates on the right that are frightening and scary. So for governor, we have Josh Shapiro, who was the
Attorney General.
Thank you. That's the one. I was like, what are those other ones? The ones that have 2 words to them. Yeah. Who's fine. And he'll be great. People aren't, I think, incredibly like, wow, excited, but he's fine. Like, if you were ever looking for just like, I just want a solid Democratic candidate that I'm the sort of person who's not that plugged in and I want to not think, Josh Shapiro's like, that's your guy.
Right.
But on the other side, Doug Mastriano is, I mean, if he wins, Pennsylvania changes completely. Yeah. Like it's a different.
Well, you shared this tweet from Greg Sargent, the brilliant Greg Sargent, the Lord and Savior, as far as I'm concerned. I think he's brilliant. At the Washington Post, who writes, "We need to be very clear on this point. If Doug Mastriano becomes governor of Pennsylvania, there is almost no chance that a Democrat who wins the state in 2024, we're talking about the presidential election, will get his or her electors certified. So if Biden runs again and wins Pennsylvania, they would not certify that he won, and democracy would be done in your state." Your thoughts on that? You think Greg is right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, Mastriano is it's funny because I wanted to say, he's like the fringe of the right, but the fringe of the right now is pretty mainstream.
Great point.
But,
yeah.
So like, I can't even necessarily play at that, but he is fully of the like January 6th was a righteous.
He was there. He was there.
Yes, he was. He was there. He's fully on board. He holds all of the most right-wing opinions. He will stop at nothing to enact them. I mean, I can see basically anything that is happening in Texas or Florida would be happening in Pennsylvania, certainly, and then potentially worse. And I absolutely believe, yes, there's no way a Democrat would win the presidential election in Pennsylvania if Mastriano is governor. He will not allow it.
Crazy.
And Pennsylvania is, we have a lot of votes, and we're kind of votes, where we get kind of swingy. We're one of those places where they like to focus, and it would be a huge, huge problem. And it's like, such a weird place to be right now. And I know that many other people have been there. Obviously, Pennsylvania is not the only place that this is happening, but this sense of just like, I know that there are a lot of absolute batshit fucking crazy people, right? Like, I know that there are, and I know that there obviously are. Mastriano didn't have to win the primary. They came out, they had him win. And I know that there are enough of them who would come out and vote for him that he could potentially win. But like, then I have this hope, and I can't tell how stupid the hope is. Like, I have this feeling so much these days. I don't know if it's something that you have too, where you're just like, you see this glimmer of hope where you hold on to it, and there's another part of your head that's just like bashing you with like a Trump hammer, just being like, don't be a fucking idiot. Do you see what happened? Like, what has happened. Why are you even believing? I
acutely suffer from that because, anybody who got the 2016 election as wrong as I did and has some kind of ability to be honest with themselves. I tend to be too optimistic and not as realistic. But I think what you're describing, the Trump hammer, is as soon as you feel like we got this, all the signs are pointing that we get this. There's no way that there's more of them than there are of us. And I mean, Earth 1 and Earth 2. But the Trump hammer comes in, and it's this kind of PTSD, like Pavlov, like it's just it comes in and says, "Whoa, don't get crazy," because you have to brace yourself for the hurt. Right.
And I mean, with this one, it's like, okay, we've got more Democrats, but then we have to get them out to vote, and there's like a part of me that's like, well, no, it's good. This is good. This is a positive thing. Like like the stupidest fucking people say, right? Like, oh, because like the moderate Republicans won't vote for this guy, they'll come over. So obviously we will win now. And it's like that voice in my head, it keeps saying that, and then it just gets shouted out with like, "Shut the fuck up, you fucking idiot! You've been proven like that's nonsense."
Well, I'm encouraged by, as you know, I've talked a lot about it. Our election here, the BOE election, and most of the elections where those types of elections where the candidates were in fact way too extreme, and it mattered a lot that they were too extreme, and they lost most places. Some places they didn't. But I feel like that's a positive sign, what happened across the country on primary day and really super local elections. But I don't know, maybe you feel differently.
No, I mean, like, I think primary day is hard to extrapolate out necessarily a trend. We want to so badly. We want to be able to say things are trending because we want, like, we're all just clawing at this desperate need to know the future so that we can, like, feel some security in the present. And
well said.
We don't have it, we just don't have it. And so the primaries in particular, I found them very, very difficult to be able to point to and say, here's what this means for the fall, because you have such a different electorate going into primaries, and it varies state to state. So even then you can't like necessarily, some states only Democrats can vote in a Democratic primary. Some states have closed primaries, some states have open primaries, things like that. That influences. So you have to like really zero down. And then how local are you talking? There's nothing. I mean, I'm not an electoral expert. I would argue no one is, but I certainly am not.
That's another good point. Yeah, because all the experts get, the polling, the science, apparently there is no science to polling.
No. So I don't see anything like strong that I can be like, well, this is showing us that it's going to trend this way in the fall. I have no clue.
Let me ask you finally then about the issue that I see, and I think a lot of smart folks see, and most people know that if you're paying too close attention to the news every day, it affects you negatively every day, and there's no sense to it. And that the reason why it's sold, including by me up until at least last week, and still figuring out what I'm going to do, is because you make money. I thought I would sell more subscriptions by doing a news segment, and I convinced myself that was people needed to know. But I knew it wasn't true. I knew it was killing me to know every news story. I knew there's not something I can do about everything. And meanwhile, I'm putting so much energy, for example, into the local Board of Education. That mattered. It made a difference. I'm putting so much energy into my family. That matters and makes a difference. My work, which is kind of coincides with change and advocacy. But at some point, it affects you, and it affects even your relationships with your kids, with your partner, with your you can't do anything about so many things. What do you think about the way the news media 24/7, whether it be on social media or cable news, drips, and what that does to us?
Yeah, I think it is very problematic and very difficult to deal with, and very, very hard to kick. Like, it's hard to move away from that. Not for everyone. I mean, like, if you never get into it, I mean, I guess, heroin's really easy to quit if you've never tried it. Like, it's fine. You have to be addicted first. But once you're addicted, there can often be this sense of like, what am I missing?
Right.
But I think that for anyone who has found themselves addicted, which I surely have been, it's like, it's pretty amazing what a sort of little cleanse can do. You spend like even 3 days away, and it's just like, oh, I missed all these stories and none of it mattered at all. Like it did not matter. It's sort of a fascinating thing. So I think in general, anything that we can do to kind of like minimize that sense of we have to know versus we want to know. There are certain things that we want to be aware of and informed about, and that we can sort of, spend a little bit more time like digging into and really understanding and learning versus, oh, I got to know about this right now because it's happening right now. So I got to know. That's a very, I mean, look, I'm speaking totally as an addict, as someone who just like fully needs to know everything right then. I'm not speaking from any holier than thou, sort of like, you must follow in my footsteps, young children, please. Here's how you'll be elevated to mindfulness.
No, but I like your perspective, just the cleanse. Even if for a few days, if you can notice the difference in how it affects you, even for a few days, then you can do better day by day by limiting it to, say, the morning and at night. So that it doesn't affect you during the day. You pop on Twitter, you go on your news site, you get alerts. The alerts will destroy you. So I just felt like I was contributing to it. I just felt like, and then there's so many other things that I think I can do here that frankly are positive. And, I kind of think the world is only probably going to get more difficult and challenging, certainly for those of us of a certain age, of a certain background, I suppose. And so what can we do to kind of help each other navigate it? And that's kind of what I want to focus on. And I really obviously want you to be a part of that forever. So that's where I'm going, and I hope that you will. I
love the implied threat of forever. Forever.
Maura, forever. You will be connected to this podcast in any number of ways. I decree it.
When you asked me to sign a contract in blood, I just thought you were being quirky, but
I knew that you had a shit ton to spare.
That's true. It was a lot easier for me to access than a pen. That's just instantaneously.
I texted you. I was like, what are you doing? You're like, I just cut my feet. I'm going to urgent care. I was like, oh, perfect. I've got a contract. Can you sign it with your long toes?
It was so weird how this strange ethereal figure then just appeared in front of me. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, that guy is very expensive, and he doesn't only work for me, is all I'll say.
I asked him for some bandages, though, and he was just like, I'm out.
He has a lot of work. He's very busy.
I was a little bit,
I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about that.
It's fine. It's just
Mr.
it's
No
not
Nonsense.
Your fault.
Yeah, he's Johnny Depp's guy.
I'm just saying, don't tip him.
He's Johnny Depp's guy. I said that joke twice. Yeah. My daughters are siding with Johnny Depp, and I have no idea what's happening in that case. I'm like, what?
Isn't it nice not to know? See, this is exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, you don't know either.
Nice. No, I have no clue. Yeah. I it drips through because I do look at Twitter, but apparently it's fully dominating TikTok.
Is that why? Yeah, because
that's what I heard on Twitter.
Yeah, that's funny. All right, Maura, I'll let you go. Thank you so much, as always, for a very comprehensive, interesting, thoughtful conversation that always makes me feel better. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, there you go. Maura, Quint, and S.E. Cupp. That is today's show. StandUpWithPete.com right now to help me do the show. It's free, but it isn't cheap. Thank you to all of the new subscribers, and thank you for bearing with me as we try to figure out what way we're going to go with the show format and how we replace the news with something positive, something perhaps that focuses on the community itself. Tuesday night, I'll host a hangout about that, brainstorming some new ideas, segments, and formats, and jokes, everything we can for the show. I'll be bringing the ideas. You can bring yours. We can punch them up, and you can be a part of producing this show. It's always been our show. So many brilliant, smart, hilarious, thoughtful people out there, and very talented as well. So I hope to see you Tuesday night at 8 o'clock for that. If you're a subscriber, you'll get a link. If you're not, sign up now, standupwithpete.com, and you can help create future format and segments of this show as we grow and learn together, building new relationships, helping each other through the tough parts, cheering each other on, networking, trying to keep each other and our families safe, and learning all along the way. One of the people that has been a huge inspiration to me in that way is John Carroll. He is, of course, a Grammy award-winning singer and songwriter, a founding member of the Starland Vocal Band. Yeah, that John Carroll. He wrote this song for us, and I'll talk to you tomorrow right here on Stand Up. Be the change you want to see, folks.
Start making sense and you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town, just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws and since they burning in sin. They knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up. We got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up. You got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up and show obedience to the voice inside. And listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.